In this video, we'll explore terrifying experiences shared by fellow YouTubers. But we want to hear from you too. We're on the hunt for real-life ghost stories, eerie encounters, and supernatural sightings from our amazing community. If you've had an experience that made your hair stand on end, send it to my email address in the description box. Your story could be featured in an upcoming video. So, turn off the lights, grab a spooky snack, and let's explore the unknown together. Happy haunting!
When I was a kid, my cousin, she was going blind. She could not see at all, even with glasses. It was just really bad. She was a little kid. She was like 10 or 11 years old. And one day her mom was gonna take her to the doctors. Everything was scheduled. And she come running down the stairs saying, Ma, I can see, I can see. And her mom thought she was just saying this because she didn't want to go to the doctors. But she ended up saying, these little men fixed my eyes. They took me away and they fixed my eyes. And she's like, yeah, okay. Well, they take her to the eye doctor, and the eye doctor is examining her eyes and everything. She can see perfect 20/20 vision, and they copped it up as a miracle, but the doctor said that she had small little pinholes in the sides of her eyes, not her tear ducts or anything, but in the sides of her eyes, she had super tiny pinholes in there, and they couldn't explain where those came from. So they just said that it was a miracle. And to this day, she can still see, and she still says the same story, that little people took her away and fixed her eyes. And I think that's incredible. That is a good sign that there is either extraterrestrial life out there, or angels, or something really happened, because that's impressive.
Whenever I was a kid, I lived with my grandmother during the week while my father drove a semi-truck, and in between her house and the neighbor's house, which she also owned and rented out, she had some trees cut down. And this was a huge farm. I'm not sure, but I mean, it looked like 1,000 acres. It was massive. By the time I came about, it wasn't really being farmed anymore. It was just unused land. We used to build tree houses out in the woods there and drive four-wheelers around, and it was a blast. But anyway, my grandmother had some of these trees cut down, had them all piled into a huge brush pile. I'm outside one day and I'm playing hide and seek with my cousin Daniel. We had made a rule that you don't go into the woods because we were too young. We weren't really supposed to be going in there to begin with, but that was one of the rules of hide and seek, is you stay out of the woods because it's too hard to go through the woods and find somebody. We're not trackers. We're like 10. So we're out there playing, and there's a big brush pile that I'm walking past, and I've been looking for Daniel for like 15 minutes, and I can't find him anywhere. As I'm walking past this brush pile, I hear, hey. And I turn and I look, and I don't see anybody. Then I hear it again, hey. I turn and I look into the brush pile, and Daniel is inside the brush pile. And at first I thought, how the heck did you get in there? How are you going to get out? And, kind of found it funny a little bit. So I'm looking through the brush pile, and it's a big, thick, jumbled mess of limbs. And as I'm looking at Daniel, he goes to turn his head toward me, because all I could see was like his side profile. He was looking to the right. He goes to turn toward me, and I realized there's a branch going through his temple. Needless to say, being so young and seeing this, it freaked me out. I thought he was seriously injured, and I took off running back to Grandma's house. When I burst in the door screaming and crying, saying, Daniel's hurt, Daniel's hurt, Daniel's sitting on the couch crying because he saw something he can't talk about when he went into the woods to hide from me for hide and seek. That happened.
And I've had some pretty wild UFO encounters. This was like right as I got my permit to drive. And I had a few friends that were going out late at night. They were going to some train track because there's supposed to be some ghost train that you can see cross the tracks at night. You can see a ghost light. The whole scary story behind it. They're like, hey, do you want to go and see if we can't spot this ghost train? Like, okay, yeah, sure, why not? So we're riding almost 2 hours away from my home in the middle of nowhere. We're in this field and we're right by the tracks, and apparently this is the spot where people see ghost lights of the train, things like that. We stood out there almost 2 o'clock in the morning, no lights on the tracks, nothing like that. Well, we decided that we were gonna go home, so we got into the vehicle, we left where we were, and as we were getting on the road, my friend said, "Holy smokes, what is that?" And he pointed up at the sky. And man, let me tell you, it was the weirdest thing. If anything, it might have been military tech, but this was massive. When we looked up, and there was this giant, and when I say giant, I can't tell you exactly how high up in the sky it was, but it looked big enough to be a football field sized craft. And there was 4 lights just constantly on it, and it was slowly rotating. And it wasn't triangular, it was kind of rectangular. It was like a square, but a little bit longer. Again, it really reminded me of a football field. And when we seen that, we all seen it. There was like 4 people. We all seen it. And when we looked up and we looked at each other real quick in shock and awe, and we went to look back, it vanished. It was gone. No sound, no trail. It was just gone. And that was my first really weird UFO experience. And I have a couple of other UFO experiences, one where I experienced one with my wife. So when it comes to an alien encounter, never have personally experienced an alien creature. But when it comes to UFO encounters, I've seen a few. Moments where you wish you had a really good camera because you could have easily have caught one of these with like a cell phone. But in that time frame, we were so shocked, we never even thought about taking our phones out to record it or take a picture of it. It was just pure shock and adrenaline. Definitely have seen shadow people. Now, I have not recently, it's been quite a few years since I've seen a shadow person. I used to catch them out of the corner of my eye, especially when I was a kid. I definitely used to see shadow people. I do have a story about a shadow person that I seen not only when I was a kid, but my mother seen as well. A long time ago, way back in the early 2000s, if not the late 90s, we were about to go to Michigan for Christmas. No, excuse me. We were about to go to Michigan for some kind of holiday event. I think it was Easter. As we were packing our vehicle to go from Florida to Michigan at that time, and next thing I know, I seen something on the tree in the distance. It looked like a person standing there. Never really paid any mind to it. I was really young, and I didn't point it out or question it. So we continue to load the vehicle up with our stuff. Next thing I know, my mom starts freaking out because she said she's seen a shadow person in the tree, and she was convinced that it was the Grim Reaper. She was convinced that it was death. So she said, yeah, we're not going to Michigan now, which was a big move for her because that's where all of her family lives, and she loves to visit her family. So for her to call off the trip, pretty big deal. Ended up calling it off, never went to Michigan, but later that day, we heard on the news there was a major accident on I-95 where there was a big pileup and many people died because of it. And at that time frame, we would have been a part of that collision, or at least we would have been a part of that traffic jam that happened. So ever since then, I've been kind of a believer that shadow people definitely are real. Whether they're men in black or not, I do not know about that one. It's a good theory, and it's not a bad one at that. Like, they could definitely be people that are remote viewing. They could be people that are remote viewing. That's not a bad guess at all. But I don't know if I necessarily believe that personally.